Today on CityCast DC, we're talking about the state of DC's mayor election. We're talking about the weird new drama over the teen curfew and the new baby elephant at the zoo, cuter than the panda. Plus, in a members-only fourth segment, some absolutely devastating jobs news about the DMV. We'll talk about how the city is, or should be, responding. I'm here with my new CityCast colleagues, Michael Brice-Saddler and Emma Uber. Today is Friday, April 24th. I'm Michael Schaffer, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Michael.
Hello. Good morning.
Hey, Emma.
Good morning.
So Michael has been a guest on CityCast before during his previous incarnation at another publication. And both he and Emma have just started at CityCast. Michael's going to be writing about DC government and politics. Emma's going to be writing about the chattiest stories in town that we can find. They're both really amazing reporters. I'm really excited to have them here to roll out their new newsletters and generally to have more people in the office to bounce ideas around with. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Likewise.
Before we get into our subjects, Ben's Chili Bowl. I don't know if you remember, it used to have a mural on the side. The mural used to include Bill Cosby. It didn't anymore, and Ben's has been closed for the last 10 months, unrelated to Bill Cosby, but for much-needed repairs. It's about to reopen on May 1st, and they have announced they're going to have a new mural, and they're soliciting public input about what ought to be there. What do you guys think?
We're about to see some of the stupidest suggestions ever, and I hope they make them public.
I might make some of them right now.
What are they?
I don't, first my thought was like, what does DC in 2026? And I thought Sandwich Guy would be a nice thing.
Oh, yes.
But the thing of Ben's, though, like when I sat back and thought more like earnestly about it, is, the murals on the sides has always been sort of icons of Black culture, shouting out to U Street and its history, particularly of Black DC culture. Ben's itself, I don't know what the new aesthetic will be. They say it's not going to change that much, but it is like a kind of retro place. I have had this sort of uncomfortable feeling in the last, couple decades as DC has uncomfortably had demographic change and has sought to sort of celebrate its Black culture legacy, that there's something a little bit awkward about. It's like you're taking a culture and putting it in a museum. Like, that's over now. We're just going to put it behind glass. I would really hope we could get like some contemporary people doing interesting stuff right now, or even doing interesting stuff within the last 10 or 15 years. I'd love to see Wale up there. And, as they learned with Bill Cosby, the dangerous thing about putting up contemporary people is they could do stuff that really disappoints you because they have a lot of living still to do. That would be my more earnest thinking. But let's not sleep on Sandwich Guy. What about you, Emma?
Yeah, I saw the call out asked for DC legends or athletes or artists. And my favorite DC sports team to follow is the Washington Spirit. And so I feel like a Trinity Rodman edition or something could be cool. I know she's not a DC native, but I think it would be cool to see some of our women's sports represented.
I wouldn't be mad at Kevin Durant. He's kind of shunned the city as far as joining the Wizards, but he's done some great things as far as the region is concerned. Maybe Gilbert Arenas. That one might be a little bit more controversial, but I think it could be kind of fun to see Agent Zero up there.
There would be no one would be surprised about the controversies, at least.
Right. And for what it's worth, Sandwich Guy is a U Street icon, while he may not be a Black icon.
He was also, as I recall, wearing a mask. So who knows who he is? It's a mystery. Michael, you wrote your first CityCast column this week about the state of the election. You spent a lot of time following campaign stuff, talking to people in the campaigns. Where are we right now? The election's about 2 months off.
In DC mayoral election terms, things are still a bit sleepy, but you could argue that they're starting to wake up ever so slightly. There was a forum this past Monday that was very well attended. I think people tuned into and are starting to try and figure out who they want to vote for beyond whatever their preconceived notions are or whatever mailer they most recently got in their mailbox. And the core conflict we're seeing between the two front runners, Kenya McDuffie and Janice Lewis-George, is this battle of institutional experience being McDuffie and this more grassroots, organic, progressive movement that's coming from Janice Lewis-George.
So the institutional experience thing in DC, as you and I have discussed, that hasn't always been a guaranteed path to power. In fact, you could say it maybe has never, or maybe with only one or two exceptions, been a path to power. What makes his people think it's going to be different for them?
I mean, you could look at the track record of Muriel Bowser in her tenure as evidence that that can work. She's had her share of challengers. I'm thinking most recently, last mayoral election, Robert White really ran to her left. He was unsuccessful, but Mayor Bowser ran a campaign based on experience. The city needs someone who is proven, who's done the work, who has the connections, and isn't going to lead the city into financial ruin with overambitious proposals that they can't follow through on. And that's the crux of what Kenyon is arguing in this race, is that Janice's proposal, which includes some really lofty housing goals, some really lofty childcare goals, are just not going to be achievable without perhaps imposing some type of tax, the tax being discussed as a business activity tax. And for him, that's a non-starter, and for some other candidates, that's a non-starter. But Janice would argue that it's going to take a bold vision to get DC out of this current, I don't know if I would call it recession, but certainly down economic period, and where it needs to go for the future.
So, yes, you're right. Bowser, particularly after she had already been in office, was able to lean on her experience. But when there's been an open seat, there's these candidates like Linda Kropp, John Ray, Sterling Tucker, who have said, I'm no one really hates me. I'm the one. I've been there, and have tended to be aced out by someone perceived as more energetic newcomer. On the other hand, Janice Lewis-George is running to the left. And as you noted with Robert White the last time, the candidate running to the left in DC also has typically not been the path to power. These outsiders or these energetic newbies who won in the past, they've tended to be I'm going to get the government moving again. It's not been an ideological thing so much as I'm going to throw some lightning bolts and light a fire under the bureaucracy.
I would agree with that. I mean, it's a gamble, but I think what Janice is banking on is that people are tired of the status quo. They're ready for someone with a bold vision, which even if you don't get there, it's still something to reach for versus let's maybe just take a couple steps in the right direction and play it safe.
Hey, Emma, you've been out, and we'll talk about it in a second, you've been out reporting on actual teens and teen curfew, but it means you've been out in DC neighborhoods. Insofar as you're having conversations, do you have any sense of, are people even talking about the mayor's race? And if so, what are they pissed at the city about, or what are they eager to have more of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I haven't heard a ton of discussion about the mayor's race. I think to Michael's point, it's been a little sleepy so far. I've been around a lot of teenagers, and so I don't know how often teenagers are typically discussing the mayor's race. I mean,
I think
14,
when Michael Brice-Saddler was a teenager, he was discussing mayor's races all the time.
Absolutely. Only thing on my mind.
Probably. Well, if I find a teen that has smart takes on the mayor's race, I'll be sure to let them know to look up CityCast on LinkedIn the next 10 years. But a lot of the vocal anti-curfew people have seemed to be really energized about Janice just because she's one of the council members that has frequently taken a stance against the curfew and voted against it repetitively. But that's just a very vocal contingent of people, both online and that I've been talking to. So that's kind of what I've been hearing on that state. But no, the teens are not opining very much on the mayoral election.
Well, I think one of the bizarro things about this moment we're in is that, as you say, look, there's people who are passionate activists who, in this case, are very critical of over-policing, of things like curfews. They really admire Janice and her principled stances she's taken. Because, the media landscape in DC has changed, there's not a sort of traditional newspaper of record the way there was. It's harder to tell how much is this contingent that is so passionate, like actually representative of anything big, or are they just representative of themselves who have access to a lot of megaphones? Nothing wrong with that. But it makes, for those of us who are observers, it makes it harder to get a sense of what's resonating and what's not. From reading your piece, which I recommend everyone go to dc.citycast.fm and read right now, I get the sense that Kenyon McDuffie's theory of the case is that while there may be a lot of noise and social media energy and passion around that, that the sort of the normies, the oldsters in the neighborhoods are not particularly paying attention to that. And if they were, they would not particularly be on that side.
That is his bet. And I mean, if you look back to recent DC elections, not just the mayoral ones, but council elections, it's not always the most boisterous online campaign that is successful. In fact, like you can think of a lot of recent examples really where there's a large online contingent, often progressive, who can appear to be representative of what the electorate thinks, but that's because they are the loudest, and some of the folks who are paying attention and are active voters are not online at all. So I learned very quickly coming onto the DC beat that you have to take what you see online with a grain of salt. But yeah, if you ask Kenyon, and he's gotten some flack for maybe not being as visible as Janice, he's ran a more, I would say, subdued campaign and has not had a whole ton of big rallies, and the energy has not quite been there. I think they want to get there, but what they would tell you is we've been knocking on just as many doors. We've been in just as many rooms with residents. We just haven't been as flashy about it. But he has been a successful candidate, say for his AG run over the course of his career. So I think you have to give him some credit that he feels like he has a formula that's going to work, and he doesn't feel like he needs to step too far out of his comfort zone to be successful in this election.
I mean, the thing with Kenyon that is bugging me is like, I feel like, he has this thing he's doing with Janice where it's like, she's got these New York ideas, or she's smuggling in dark New York money, which is, as you noted, is his way of sort of flicking at her status as a member of the Democratic Socialists of America and linking it to Mamdani. To my mind, though, like, this is a city where a lot of people move in and out. It's a city of pretty sophisticated people. And that kind of like, there's any out of town idea is bad, and New York City, we don't want that. Like, that strikes me as just cringe. Now, his point of view may be like, who cares how it strikes you? That you're not the one I'm trying to talk to with that refrain. It strikes me as like incredibly small time, and it gets me to the thing that I worry about with McDuffie's campaign. I suspect I'm not the only one, which is like, all right, you don't like her ideas, which you think are too far left. You don't like her on curfews, which you think is insufficiently supportive of public safety. But like, what is your thing? He's got this sort of like, well, the safety net's great, but so are markets, which is, I expect a lot of people in DC actually think that, but it's a much, much harder thing to sell. How are they doing that?
I mean, it's the kind of classic, like, you have to trust me. I know best. And Mayor Bowser actually played that same playbook. I'm thinking about her negotiations, or I would say her handling of the White House interference in DC, for example. There were several council members who, including Janice Lewis-George, who wanted to see a stronger fight from the city, more visceral pushback, more we're going to stand our ground and not bend the knee in any respect. Whereas Mayor Bowser ran a playbook of, we have to be able to work with everybody here. I'm not going to just stand on a principle and knock back down for no good reason when that might not be the most tactical thing to do. And I think McDuffie is in essence playing that same game, and kind of with the economy here. Like, we can't just go for it and potentially put the city in a place where either we're not able to live up the promises we're making to voters, or we run ourselves off of the railroad tracks economically.
Right, and get a takeover.
Possibly.
Okay, the last weekend of April, the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian is hosting one of those events that remind you why we are so lucky to live in DC. The Living Earth Festival is happening at the museum Saturday and Sunday, April 25th and 26th. It is free. It's a celebration of native art, creativity, and the power of clay, built around Always Becoming, this breathtaking outdoor sculpture installation by Nora Naranjo Morse. There's going to be live performances, artist demos, hands-on activities, and more. And definitely make time for the Mitsitam Cafe inside the museum. If you haven't already eaten there yet, you're missing out on one of the most underrated and unique spots in this entire city. And for my money, the best food you can get at one of the Smithsonian museums. Again, it's free on Saturday and Sunday, April 25th and 26th. Check out the full schedule of activities at americanindian.si.edu or the museum's social media at Smithsonian NMAI. Did you know DC gets fewer than 30 truly window weather days a year? Days that are sunny, not too hot, and not too cold. Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale is going on now, and it is the perfect time to make the most of every one of those precious days. You could save up to 50% off all the windows for your home. Window Nation's installation crews can finish the job in one day or less, so you can enjoy the breeze with minimal disruption. Best of all, they offer a lifetime warranty on all their windows, so you can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. But hurry, the sale ends soon. Schedule a fast free consultation now at windownation.com. Emma, your piece this week, which again, everyone should go to dc.citygast.fm and read. You spent time with like the one constituency that hasn't talked much about the curfews, which is the actual targets of the curfew, teens. You're out doing this, and then on Tuesday, there's this very strange series of votes in the council, which, you know, for those of you who are just joining us late, there was a curfew law that expired. This law allows police to say to target zones and say within this zone, no more than 8 kids can gather together at once, and if they do, we can tell them to move along and, you know, stop them if they refuse. That expired. The mayor's has used her own personal power to declare a temporary extension of it, but that's going to expire. And so the council has to reestablish that law. And they kind of did. You were watching. What happened?
They kind of did. So they voted on a permanent bill to give the police chief this power. But because it's DC, there's a long congressional approval process, so that bill actually probably wouldn't take place for months, definitely after the summer, which is the time when kids are out of school, it's nice outside, and that's when people are most worried about these takeovers. The council has actually been extending this stricter curfew policy on an emergency basis since July. And so they just keep extending it a little bit more, voting again, keep extending it a little bit more. But the thing about using an emergency legislative tactic is that you need 9 votes instead of just a simple majority. And so even though the council was able to secure the permanent bill, they couldn't get an emergency extension this time, which leaves the district without a stricter curfew policy, at least for the foreseeable future. Though I do think they're going to take this up again at the beginning of May.
All right, so why couldn't they get this supermajority? As you predicted, they've been ripped about this by the mayor, by the U.S. attorney who's appointed by Trump. Why'd they stop?
Yes, the vote didn't even happen, but it's perceived that there were going to be 5 holdouts, the same 5 people that voted against the permanent bill. And that includes Janice Lewis-George, that is Councilmembers Trayon White, Robert White, Councilmember Parker, and Councilmember Nadeau. And these people have been historically critical of the curfew. I think that the speculation was that perhaps Councilmember Parker was going to be the 9th vote. They took a recess between the successful vote and the one that they ended up not taking at all. And it was supposed to be a 5-minute recess that turned into 35 minutes. And it seemed like at the time there was a lot of discussion between Councilmember Pinto and Councilmember Parker. And it was after that discussion that the council decided to delay the vote. So there's definitely been some holdouts. They've been working to put together amendments to kind of soften some of the fears of over-policing, but these council members that vote against it are concerned that, especially as the National Guard and federal agents are in DC streets, that they are giving law enforcement an excuse to harass DC teens, particularly DC teens of color.
But Michael, 2 of those holdouts, Janice Lewis-George and Robert White, who's running for Congress, they're both running in citywide elections. So I assume there was at least some political calculation in this. What do they think they know about the electorate and how this stance will play?
It's not sexy to be policing teens as soon as they step off the metro. And frankly, the images of National Guard or whoever with guns and questioning teens about where they're going when they're coming home is jarring to see. And I think there's a calculus that most residents agree. But I think this conversation is incredibly complicated. As Emma pointed out, you have very intelligent lawmakers not necessarily sure what the best solution is because we've been trying to legislate this for a very long time now. But I think it just goes back to that imagery when it comes to those politicians who are against voting for this, and the belief that teens shouldn't be harassed, quote unquote, for just trying to exist. Now, I do think there's also a large population out there who wonder why the teens are outside at all and think that this is something that's necessary for the safety of the community in Navy Yard and elsewhere, and for the teens themselves, frankly.
Right. And to judge from how McDuffie is talking, he thinks that that population doesn't just include like fancy pants gentrifiers in Navy Yard, but includes a lot of old heads in the neighborhoods of Black Washington.
Yes, and I don't think he's incorrect about that.
These videos, though, that have gone around of like, I don't know, one with an actual MPD officer dragging a couple of girls off a e-bike, and National Guard sort of questioning kids at the top of an escalator, which to me, like the law is that they can't be in more than groups of more than 8. These were just a couple of girls coming up an escalator. Maybe they were going to go join others, but they weren't. It's pretty ugly stuff.
Yeah, and I think especially when you see a National Guard member in full uniform and armed, like Michael said, that's an extremely striking image. And so, to be clear, honestly, a lot of the critics of the curfew, including the council members, aren't in defense of these teen takeovers. They just want to see different approaches, whether that be more programming for youth or things like that, because they're basically saying, yes, these takeovers may be disruptive, but we cannot risk putting our children in direct contact with law enforcement. And a point Janice Lewis-George keeps making is that these law enforcement, whether they be National Guard or federal agents, might not even be trained in de-escalation or community policing. So why would we give them any excuse to interact with our city's young people? But yeah, these videos have popped up, especially this past weekend. The one of the MPD officer pulling the 2 girls off the bike, I reached out to DC Police for comment, and a spokesperson told me that it has been referred to the Office of Police Complaints. And so maybe we'll be getting some more updates on that front.
So what about the teens? Like, what do they think of the curfews? Wait, what do they think of the curfews?
Yeah, I talked to 10 teens. I attended a variety of DC Department of Parks and Recreation events over spring break. And honestly, they had more split opinions than I expected. Some of them said kind of what I expected going in, that they don't appreciate the curfew and they want to go to Navy Yard and have fun with their friends. But I talked to quite a few that seemed to blame other teens for what was happening. All of them were extremely angry about the way that they were being discussed online in the media. They felt like they were being stereotyped and judged by mostly people that aren't from DC. And I think there was a lot of anger that they couldn't enjoy the city, their city, because of the actions of certain teenagers. So it was interesting. I mean, one girl told me, she was like, the curfew doesn't matter to me because my parents' curfew is earlier than that time. So why does the city have a curfew? And I thought that was an interesting comment as well. So I think it's safe to say that the teens actually have a wide variety of views on this, but do not appreciate the overall tone of the conversation, no matter what side they fall on.
Listen, like my theory of this case, and I think I'm right because I was a teenager once too, as you guys were, is that like a bunch of people want to meet up someplace, right? Because it's fun. You can be out. You can, have some agency over your life, buy some food from food trucks, whatever. And some percentage of those people, because these are teenagers, are idiots and who are going to do dumb stuff. And that is just the way of the world. I'm curious what the kids you talk to, I don't think fit into that last category. Like, what do they think is the best way to stop the bad stuff? Yes.
So I tried to get there with some of these teens. I don't know that all of them had like a super fleshed out policy plan, but I will say time and time again, and, disclaimer, maybe this is because I was at DPR events. all of them spoke extremely highly of the teen jams. Even two of the teenage boys that I spoke to that talking to is a little bit like pulling teeth. They were classic teenage boys. They weren't very wordy in their responses. By far the most animated I saw them get was that they loved to go play basketball at the teen jams. And it offered a venue where you could see people from other schools. You could catch up with people. You could get food. You could dance. And so I do think that those have been extremely popular among the youth. And most of the teens said that they wanted to see more of those.
Describe the teen jams for just a sec. Like, what are they? And I know, that, boy, you mentioned the budget numbers are pretty expensive, but what are these things? And are they fun? Would you have wanted to go to one?
Yeah, DPR told me that they cost an average of $148,000 to put on per team jam, though they do say most of that is staffing, which I think is on an overtime basis. But a teen jam, it's typically at a rec center. They have music, they have slushies. There's normally like a basketball court. It's truly just a space for teens to hang out. Some of it is structured, like sometimes there's organized games, but it's really just a space that from 6 to 10 p.m. teens can spend time with each other in an enclosed area where they're not, out in the lawn and Navy Yard. And I think that I would have wanted to go to one of them. I mean, I loved school dances and walking around the mall growing up. And part of it was just like seeing people outside of school and being seen. And I think that the teen jam has become that sort of scene for a lot of DC youth.
As a former idiot teen, though, I do have to wonder, like, what's the incentive to go to the supervised thing versus the unsupervised thing? Personally, I would just, on principle, not want to go to the supervised thing.
Yes, and I think that's true.
Are you saying that Emma is a square?
I have asked that question because Councilmember Henderson, when I talked to her, she was like, we do have teens that think they're quote unquote too cool for DPR. And DPR is really like making an effort to reach these teens. Like they're creating flyers on Instagram that are almost like in the style of these teen takeover flyers that you're seeing. And I also asked one of the teen boys that I spoke to who'd been both to these teen jams and the Navy Yard takeover. And he said the incentive was the free food. The Navy Yard takeover does not have free slushies, and the DPR teen jam does.
That's a pretty good incentive, I won't lie.
Yeah, I might go to a teen jam.
Sold.
This is Sister Nancy Downing, CEO of St. Anne's Center for Children, Youth, and Families. For over 160 years, St. Anne's has provided children, young mothers, and families across the D.C. area the emotional, educational, financial, and loving support they need to grow in health and happiness. I'd like to invite you to Hope Blossoms, our annual fundraising gala, on May 13th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Columbia Country Club, 7900 Connecticut Avenue in Chevy Chase, Maryland. It's an evening to celebrate our families and thank everyone whose generosity has made this mission possible. As our Director of Clinical Social Work, Nina Harvey, says, at St. Anne's, we meet women where they are, affirm their dignity, and help them recognize the strength they already carry within themselves. If you'd like to attend Hope Blossoms, volunteer, or support St. Anne's in other ways, please reach out to Ellen Toops at etoups@stanns.org. We would love to see you at Hope Blossoms on May 13th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Columbia Country Club, 7900 Connecticut Avenue in Chevy Chase, Maryland. See you there.
All right, here's where you will catch me, if not at a teen jam. Outside the baby elephant enclosure at the National Zoo. Have you guys seen the pictures?
Yes. Adorable. Adorable.
DC has a significant, although maybe more vocal than numeric, population of people who are not on board with the pandas having become our official animal symbol. They accuse the pandas of being surly, indolent, mean to one another, fake cute. Lin Mai, on the other hand, is only 2 months old, Asian baby elephant. Her name means spirit blossom in Vietnamese. There was a video of her getting a bubble bath that blew up this week. And as of Wednesday, she's on public display at the National Zoo.
Wow. I don't know if I appreciate the whitewashing of like the power of elephants. I mean, they can be kind of vicious. You have to provoke them, but like I've seen elephants do some dangerous things. I don't know.
I'm no Asian elephant expert, but she's only 2 months old. Will she stay cute? Or is she going to become like an awkward teen like everyone else does?
Let's talk about the elephant teen takeovers, okay? What's Lin Mai's curfew? What are we going to do?
So if you guys will recall, I mean, we were talking about the mural a minute ago. The zoo opened it up to suggestions, although not pure public voting because of the legacy of Bodie McBoatface, for what her name should be. And this was the name that was picked.
I think it's a pretty name for what it's worth.
I agree with you. I
like it.
And I like the concept of spirit blossom.
It's very delicate until the elephant gets older and its memory starts to recall. It's the bad treatment it may have had 40 years ago and
Exactly.
decides to stomp out that individual once it sees them.
All right, today paid subscribers get a bonus fourth roundup chat about some crazy labor statistics regarding DC. If you want to be sure you always get the full episode, please become a member. Head to membership.citycast.fm and sign up. It's only $10 a month. Members get ad-free listening, exclusive members events, and an extra events newsletter every week. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. Hey, both of you guys, before we go, is there stuff in the next week that is like the next shoes to drop on the stories you've been watching?
I'm just about to head out the door to go to DC Superior Court to attend an Empower hearing. Empower's the embattled rideshare that has been operating unregistered in the district for the past couple years, and there's been quite the legal saga. And so I'm hoping to have the latest on this and see the fate of Empower and its outspoken CEO.
And on the curfews, council meets on Tuesdays. Is there a chance they will readdress that issue this coming Tuesday?
I don't believe so, but Council Chairman Mendelson did say that he's going to try to work on getting a vote before the May 1st lapse. Currently, they wouldn't vote on it. They wouldn't be scheduled to vote on it again until May 2nd. But I think that there's probably the powers that be putting a little bit of pressure on a prompter vote there. So I will be sure to keep everyone updated.
And Michael, what's up in the mayoral politics, or for that matter, other election stuff in the coming week?
We do have other races going on. I'll be heading out the door myself to co-moderate a DC delegate debate that the DC bar is hosting. So I should have more to say on that race soon. That got a little bit spicy this past week between Councilmember Brooke Pinto and Councilmember Robert White. So look forward to asking them more about a dossier that may or may not have been put out online. That was a little controversial. And then we also have some other races to pay attention to at large. There's a lot of candidates in that race, and next Tuesday I'll be moderating an Office of Campaign Finance debate for both the special election and the regular at-large Democratic primary that's coming up. So stay tuned for that and tune in if you're able.
All right, and if anybody's got zingers they want to get Michael to ask, send them his way.
Please do. Please do.
And you guys, it is so awesome to have you here. It's really like my work life has gotten so much more fun as we've got like more and more and more people with which to talk about news and DC, and particularly folks who spend their days being out there, meeting people, talking to people, and learning stuff that no one would know if not for them. So thank you both.
My first CityCast DC podcast has been a joy.
Woohoo!
I don't know what number this is, but glad to be on as a member of the team and not just a guest.
And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Annie Reese, Julia Karen, Ash Durbin, and Lizzie Goldsmith. Newsletter editors Kayla Cote-Stemmerman and me, Michael Schaffer, wrote our really, really fabulous newsletter, CityCast DC, this week. Please sign up. And our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, again, Michael Schaffer. Music is by Alex Roldan, with additional music from Rosedale and Rue Walker from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed this show, why not tell everyone about it while you're waiting to see Lin Mai at the zoo? We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.